All right, Jeff, it's playoff week finally after a long season. Let's bring on Eagles insider Dave Spadaro. Dave, we made it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say long season, and it immediately made me think back to Brazil and the start of the year, and it seems like forever ago. And it's that one extra week of the regular season that really does make it seem like forever. And so here we are in mid-January, and we're just now getting to the playoffs, and could not come at a better time for the Philadelphia Eagles. Really want to see what this team can do in the postseason. It's been such an extraordinary run. 12 wins in the last 13 games after the 2-2 start. And, you just hope that that momentum can carry through to the playoffs.
There's so many things that have happened during this year, but you brought up, I think it was the last time we talked, or maybe two times ago, you were getting ready for Brazil. You were going to have the party over at Lincoln Financial
Yeah.
Field
Yeah.
against this very same team.
Yeah. Correct. We had a great party there, sold out. Did not realize that. I honestly will tell you, I thought that it could be a preview because I thought the Packers would be a team to be reckoned with, and they certainly have been. Um, the teams have changed a lot since then. That first game, the Eagles defense was a sieve, and 7 plays they gave up of 20 plus yards, and Saquon Barkley scored 3 touchdowns, but kind of struggled on the ground. The Eagles really didn't get it going. Cam Jurgens had a missed snap, and Jalen Hurts turned the football over 3 times, and all that, and here we go. And it's largely the same personnel on the field as it was way back in week 1. So it should be a great game on Sunday at Lincoln Financial Field.
There's a ton of credit to go around, but let's start with the defense. Where do you see what was the changing point? Where was the inflection point where this defense went from what you said is a sieve to what it has become now under this team?
It certainly happened after the bye week. And, the Eagles went into the bye week after Baker Mayfield shredded them, quick passing attack, defense didn't tackle well. It just offered very little resistance to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Vic Fangio replaced Avonte Maddox at the nickel position with Cooper DeJean. Now, Cooper is a rookie, second-round draft pick. Everybody was very excited to see him, but he hadn't played much in training camp, had missed most of camp, played just one preseason game. So for him to be elevated to the starting position at nickel, which plays, 45, 50% of the game, was like, well, is this really going to make a difference? Well, it did. And I remember the first game watching the Packers pick on Avonte Maddox, who's been a very, very strong Eagle through the years, but he's just not as physically big and young and strong as is Cooper DeJean. And that, from that point on, the Eagles defense just got better and better and better and better. Now, they had a couple of games to start off with, Cleveland and New York, the Giants, where the Eagles defense was playing weaker offenses so they could kind of get used to each other and gel a bit. But Cooper played great football, and his ability to come to the line of scrimmage and force the run, his tackling skills are excellent. His coverage abilities, terrific. He's strong. He's a bigger body. I feel like that is when the Eagles defense started to really take shape. And then, the tackling improved, and we saw Zach Bond become a force, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson becoming the ball-hawking safety. They got the pass rush from interior Jalen Carter establishing himself on a game-in, game-out basis as a dominant player. But certainly you point to that post-bye week, and from a very tangible decision to change out the nickel cornerback spot, since then the Eagles' defense has been best in the league.
He and Quinion Mitchell have really changed the tenor of that secondary, and it's going to be needed. I mean, the Eagles defense gave up just 35 pass plays of 20 yards or more all season. The Packers rely on explosive plays. They had 59 pass plays of 20 yards or more. They're without Christian Watson, and Jordan Love comes in. He says he hopes he'll play his elbow. He'll
game
play.
grip.
Yeah, I think he'll play too, but he had this numbness in his hand last week. I think Watson is more the impact on that offense not being there. But talk about the matchups with Jaden Reed and the secondary and some of the other weapons that the Packers have out there.
Yeah, well, first of all, Jordan Love, I think it's gamesmanship. I don't think there's any problem at all. It's fine. Eagles expect Jordan Love to be at his very best, and he's a good quarterback. I thought he might take that next step to great quarterback this year. There have been some inconsistent moments. And even without Christian Watson, who's averaged 21 yards a catch, only had, I think, 24 receptions. They still have weapons. And Jaden Reed is the one who did it to the Eagles in week 1. But I think where it helps the Eagles the most is having one on the field. You can scheme a little bit, maybe roll some coverage, make sure you have a safety over the top. When you have 2 players like that on the field, it makes it very difficult. 2 vertical threats. So Jaden Reed remains, and he will be the vertical threat. And he's also a reverse guy and a jet sweep guy. And the Packers like to get the ball in his hands. He averaged 16 yards a catch. He's an excellent receiver. But not having Christian Watson's a loss for them. And so I think it does help the Eagles defense. It clearly comes down. The others, you mentioned the explosive play statistic. The other statistic that's so important is turnovers. And Green Bay's turnover ratio and the Eagles' turnover ratio, both very good. Both teams have scored a lot of points after taking the football away. Key number there. It's interesting. On Wednesday, I spoke with Lane Johnson, and I said, what is the formula for the playoffs? And he mentioned big plays, and he mentioned turnovers, and he mentioned red zone. And those, in a world of like so much analytics and so many statistics, when you break it down, it kind of comes down to those, doesn't it? Like, score touchdowns in the red zone, don't turn the ball over, and don't give up big plays. And you should be okay.
See, I would think you ask an offensive lineman that question, and the first thing they say is offensive line. That whatever happens in the trenches is what happens.
Well, in their mind, like, their daily approach is to just take care of their little box, their little space, and they don't involve themselves with everything. But I think in the macro view of what the team stresses every day and what the coaching staff through the years that Lane has been here and has experienced a lot of winning, those are the messages that I think are conveyed on a regular basis. And those are really kind of the difference makers when you actually step back and look at who wins playoff games. I mean, if you even want to break it down even more than that, I kind of generally break it down to the team whose quarterback played the best usually wins the game. And then you parse it down even more, and that goes back to turnovers, red zone touchdowns, and explosive plays.
People were worried. Jason Kelce retires last year. Who's going to take over as the leader on that line? Is it Lane Johnson at this point?
I mean, it's Lane. It's
Jordan.
funny because I didn't think you were going to go there with a question. I thought you were going to ask me about Cam Jurgens, but I will include him in my answer because I do want to pat myself on the back. Anywhere and everywhere I spoke, whether in shows or addressing groups of people prior to the season, the idea that Jason was leaving, from a leadership standpoint, that kind of takes care of itself. Lane's the leader. Jordan Mailata's a leader. Landon Dickerson's been around. Cam, in his own way, is a really young guy, but a great leader. Mekhi Becton kind of just folded right into it and really seamlessly worked his way into becoming a top quality right guard after being, if you think that culture doesn't impact a player, Mekhi Becton is a great case study of somebody who played with the Jets, suffered a bunch of injuries, 4 offensive line coaches, multiple head coaches, never lived up to his first round billing, comes to Philly as a free agent afterthought, and is playing terrific at right guard. And it's because he's in the right environment. But I will pat myself on the back that people wondered about Jason and losing Jason and how would it be? And oh my gosh, this offensive line, how are they going to recover? Cam Jurgens was the night they drafted him. I remember going into Jeff Stoutland's office watching film. Jeff could not be more, the offensive line coach, could not be more thrilled with getting the next Jason Kelce in Cam Jurgens. And Cam's come in and become a Pro Bowl player. That offensive line, guys, you know what, they are just great. And they've got depth, and it is a program within the program that the offensive line excels here.
We talked about before the season what it would be like for Saquon to be behind a line where he did not get hit in the backfield before he got a chance to get through the line. 2,005 yards later.
And more than 1,000 of those yards before contact.
And that's the big difference with what these road graders do up there. I'm excited to see all the weapons on the field because we haven't seen that. With Goddard, Smith, Brown, and Barkley, I think we've only seen that like 2 or 3 games this season. Talk about what it's going to be like to have all these weapons back out there on the field this week for this team.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the key, in addition to what we've talked about here, is that, how do you knock off the rust from Jalen Hurts having missed the last 2+ games and not practicing in that time. And when they've practiced at Lincoln Financial Field this week, it's like, windy Wizard of Oz wind, like crazy winds. Like it's really hard to even function in the passing game. So how do you get the offense out and moving and scoring early? Really going to be hard if the Eagles, who have struggled scoring points early, if they do that again against a quality team like Green Bay, hard to come back. In that first game, the Eagles turned the ball over twice. Eagles defense held them to 2 field goals. Eagles stayed in the game, much like they did in Baltimore, for example. But in the playoffs, you got to come out and play 4 quarters. You can't win with 2.5 quarters of good football. So that, to me, is the key. Having all these weapons. Look, Goddard helps you in multiple ways. Red zone, bootlegs, running game as a blocker, terrific player. But, they got to use him. They got to extend drives. They can't have 3s and outs. Saquon, clearly, I believe that Green Bay will come in and they will stack the box and they will blitz and they will force Jalen Hurts to win from the pocket and try to minimize Saquon Barkley. Green Bay's been very good against the run this year. And so I don't think that changes. The Eagles are going to have to make plays in the passing game. That's Jalen Hurts. And that has to start from the beginning. I mean, I've got to believe that with Jair Alexander out of the game for the Packers, their best cornerback, I've got to believe that this offensive approach will include a lot of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
That was going to be my follow-up. With Jair drew the primary assignment with AJ and followed him all over the field in that first matchup. It seems like there are some opportunities for, what Lane talked about, those big plays in the passing game, given some of those weapons that the Eagles have with the deficiencies in the Packers secondary now.
Yeah, I mean, once the Eagles got it rolling in Brazil, they ran up 410 yards and they were really terrific. And AJ had, a big game, big 70-yard catch and run just after halftime. So I think the weather on Sunday is going to be cold, not super cold, but cold and minimal winds. So the passing game should be able to function at a high level. And I mean, I don't think anybody can cover A.J. Brown. I don't think one guy can cover Devontae Smith. So get the throwing game going, and maybe you throw to open up the run. And that's always been the Andy Reid philosophy, and that's kind of something that I was born with. And it's something the Eagles haven't done particularly well early in games until they got to Pittsburgh. And they had a big first quarter when they played the Steelers here. And then they went to Landover, Maryland to play the Commanders, and they were rolling in the first quarter. And Jalen had 41 yards rushing, and Saquon had the big touchdown run. And then it all fell apart.
I remember when Nick Sirianni was first hired, you came on here and talked about your confidence in what he would do for this team. I'll pat us on the back that we don't do polls, but earlier this year, there was a poll done after a game where I think 70% of the people wanted Nick Sirianni fired.
that must have been the Cleveland game when he got into it with the fans a little bit.
50 wins later.
How's he turned this around?
By being himself, and he talked about it the other day, the idea that there's kind of a college atmosphere here. It's a fun place to be. He makes it fun. He's very energetic. He's very connect-oriented. The way every business should be run: connect, work together, try to be selfless, be honest, be transparent, and the players love it. And there's a great collection of talent here as well. And so his whole thing has always been double down on what you believe to be the way to run your daily business. And he's doubled down on that. And 4 straight playoff appearances. I think his winning percentages is over 70%. It's like 4th best, 6th best, something like that in the history of the NFL in the Super Bowl era. I mean, the only thing he hasn't delivered is the Lombardi Trophy. And so that is what the Eagles are hunting for. The Let's Hunt slogan is on for the Philadelphia Eagles in these 2024 postseason games. And it's going to be a tough road in the NFC, man. And I feel really confident in Nick Sirianni to game manage timeouts, make decisions on going for it on 4th down. I think he does a terrific job with that.
I did want to ask, we talked about offense, we talked about defense. I got to ask about special teams, not just kicking. Jake Elliott's, he's a great Eagle, but struggled at times this season.
Yep.
The Packers have blocked a couple of kicks this season. At the same time, the Eagles have struggled in return coverage and kickoffs, and they've got Kason Nixon, who's a two-time first-team All-Pro. Talk to us about the special
Yeah,
team opportunities for both sides and challenges.
huge. I mean, you mentioned Kason, and he's a fantastic explosive punt and kickoff return man. I'm not giving him a chance to return the ball. I'm booting it through the end zone if I can, depending on the wind, and I'm directional kicking to the sidelines in the punt game. So Braden Mann's got a lot on his plate. Cooper DeJean, rookie in the playoffs, can't make any mistakes. Explosive ability, but can't make any mistakes. Eagles kickoff return performance has been so-so. Had a big one last week. Maybe that's a harbinger of things to come. And Jake has to be reliable, and he has not been from 50 and out. And this is something we are not accustomed to seeing in the playoffs. Every kick matters. Jake is the guy. It's not, it's generally been he's missed kicking to the left, hooking. And so the analogy is golf. And when you play golf, if you're consistently doing something wrong, you correct the swing plane. And so Jake has got to correct the swing plane, be consistent, make good contact. And when he's called upon, man, he has to deliver. Every single point counts. Green Bay has outstanding special teams. It is so incumbent upon the Eagles on Sunday to win the battle of special teams. It cannot be overlooked.
I never thought I'd say this in my lifetime, but the Super Bowl right now in the NFC runs through Detroit. Never thought I'd actually say those words.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
it's amazing, isn't it?
But are the Eagles the most complete team going into the playoffs right now,
I mean,
assuming that Hurts is healthy?
yeah, I don't know many teams that can run out their third string quarterback and beat another starting NFL team as the Eagles did last week with Tanner McKee.
Other than the Giants.
um, look, if there's areas where you look at the Eagles and you go, I'm a little concerned. I think offensively, you're just talking about early starts, starting fast with Jalen and getting the rust knocked off. Otherwise, the offense is solid, like really solid. Defense, edge rush, is there enough there off the edge to get to the quarterback to affect the Jordan Love? And then after that, Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold or, Matthew Stafford. I don't know. They got to get these. Nolan Smith has to keep bringing it, and Josh Sweat has to bring it, and Jalen Sun has to bring it, and then they've got to have Jalen Carter be a dominant player inside, etc. I think the Eagles are really complete. I mean, Detroit has a certain special something along with a juggernaut offense. They've got a tremendous defensive list of injuries that you go, gosh, at some point this has to catch up with them, but so far it hasn't, and they're playing at home, so they are the team to beat. I think in Super Bowl seasons in the past, we've kind of looked back and gone, well, in 2017 it was like, they got lucky against the Atlanta Falcons, and then the Minnesota Vikings, they weren't quite that great number 2 seed. In 2022, the Giants were like a first time under, Brian Dable head coach in the playoffs. Woohoo, they're great. They weren't. And then the Niners lose their starting quarterback in the first quarter, and that was a blowout. This road is much, much harder. But I do think the Eagles are a complete team, a very deep roster, an experienced playoff team. And they potentially would get 2 home playoff games with only a potential third game on the road. And I don't think this team is afraid of going to Detroit or whatever. I mean, Detroit, all respect to Detroit, but the Eagles know that if they play their best football, with as physical as they are, as good as they are at the line of scrimmage, they can beat any team anywhere.
I just want to close on the emotion of the playoffs. This is a team that, the Eagles have been in the playoffs the last couple of years. And so you have a lot of people with experience about what to expect this weekend when they get out on that field. You also have a lot of young guys, and this is a team that plays with a lot of emotion. At times, it's been a problem for them in the season. They follow the lead of their coach. Talk about playing with controlled emotion this weekend for them.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, Jalen Carter and CJ Gardner-Johnson, they are marked men in the NFL. They are emotional guys. You cannot take the bait. And I think that has been stressed to them. Ball security has been stressed to them. Don't try to play hero ball. Saquon Barkley, look, I mean, Barkley's never won a division title, right? So, like, as great a player as he is, this is uncharted territory for him, right? Like, this is new. So, play within yourself. play with great emotion, play with great intensity, play with great urgency, but don't try to be something that you're not. And I don't really think that'll be a problem. I mean, this is a young team. I mean, I think the only starters over 30 are Lay on defense and Lane Johnson on offense, um, which is kind of remarkable to think. I think that's correct. Really incredible to think that a team that's this young and has building blocks in place for continuity is as poised as it is and appears to be. It was very telling to me to watch on Sunday night the Minnesota Vikings stumble around against the Detroit Lions, a game where the pressure, to me, clearly got to the Minnesota Vikings. Ball got kicked out of bounds, missed a field goal. Sam Darnold stunk. They couldn't score touchdowns in the red zone. These are the things that you just cannot do. And the magnification of the importance of these kinds of games is different. When anybody says, "Oh, it's just football," yeah, but it's win or go home. So it's just football, yes, but you cannot make mistakes that you would normally make in the regular season and expect to get away with it.
The season started with Brazil. The show started talking about Brazil. You had quite a party in Link. Is this going to be a better party this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I mean, I think the town is ready. The whole region's ready. I think the Packers are going to travel well. It's a great matchup, two really good teams, and let's get this thing started. I mean, it is the prime TV slot Sunday at 4:30, and I mean, I would tell you that I can't wait, but like again, you kind of learn to just keep it really like as even keeled as you can. And then when you get to Sunday, man, it's showtime, and you do your little part, your little teeny part, and you do it great, and you hope that it all comes together and you win the football game and you stay alive.
Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, always appreciate you giving us some time. Hope we're celebrating after Sunday and have a good time out there. Stay warm.
I will, guys. Thank you very much. Go Birds, and let's see if we can talk next week.
That'd be awesome. Thanks.